Hi, everybody. Karen Roby and Adrian Kingsley-Hughes here for ZDNet, talking today about coronavirus and its impact on so many different facets of our world. Before we get to talking specifically, Adrian, about tech companies, Apple specifically, let's just talk about, touch on just the human side of things here, kind of effect this is having on us.
Well, it's hard to kind of shift the idea that it's very scary. It's something that's come upon us very quickly from sort of nowhere, and very suddenly we're having to change how we live and work. Thousands, millions of people are now finding themselves working from home, whereas once they were putting themselves in cars and going to offices in the morning, and that's a big change. There's the whole concept of social distancing that people are having to come to grips with, and I think even for introverts, that one can be quite hard at times. There's then the whole idea of uncertainty. Am I going to get sick? Yeah. Is my job going to be there? There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and I think that needs to be acknowledged. I think there needs to be a much wider discussion about the effect that this uncertainty potentially can have on people. And I think there are ways that that ball will move forward, and I actually think that the tech can play a part in reducing some of those impacts that it will have on people. But then to move on to the effect that it's having on companies and companies that drive the tech world, and Apple being one of the big ones. Apple has its big developer conference upcoming, WWDC, which it usually runs in June. That's now only a few months away. It's unlikely that it's going to happen because Apple would need to open the bookings for that probably by the middle of next month, and I don't see this having blown over by the middle of next month. So Apple is probably going to have to change how WWDC works. It's no longer going to be feasible to bring 6,000 people from all across the world into a room and have them rub shoulders with Apple executives and Apple's brightest engineers. That just would not be smart. But I'm also pretty sure that a company like Apple can find new ways of making this conference work in a way that is virtual. And my hope is that Apple finds a way to make it more inclusive for people. I've read an awful lot out there that, no, WWDC will be disastrous for Apple. And while I think it's an important place for developers to come and developers to have that interaction with Apple engineers, it really is only a few people that make it there. And it's very expensive. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort for people. For most people, you're probably looking at it costing $8,000, $9,000 when everything's taken into consideration. That's out the reach of a lot of developers. My hope is that Apple opens out WWDC, makes it much easier, much cheaper for people, opens it out to be much more virtual, maybe having the labs with engineers being virtual. I think that would do much more for iOS development than having a conference somewhere that 6,000 people who are in essentially a lottery with one another to get a ticket have to fight over to get a ticket. I think that could be a lot better. And I think maybe we're going to see conferences revolutionize down the line, and that this time next year, this whole idea of tech conferences will have evolved to a point where virtual will be just as legitimate as coming into a room with people. So let's see if that change happens.
Yeah, most certainly. And Adrian, I know, of course, Apple, as they, usually is very tight-lipped about things. Talk about that a little bit, and also about the specific products, what it could mean for those.
Well, Apple is very tight-lipped, and probably the first we'll hear about WWDC being cancelled is when Apple will reveal what it will have in its place. I expect that to happen before the end of April, because we would expect WWDC to be announced in April. So Apple's got a few more weeks to figure out what it's going to do. But I've no doubt that it's not going to be that WWDC is cancelled. It will be a virtual event. As for other things, coronavirus has had a massive impact in China. And most of the tech world has a vast amount of its supply chain in China. And products are affected. We're already seeing iPhone shortages. AirPod Pro has been hit quite hard. And if you look around, you can see other things that are starting to show signs of shortages. Another thing that's in short supply now are repair products for devices. So replacement screens, replacement motherboards. We're already starting to see that weak links in the supply chain are having quite broad impacts. Apple was expected to release a new set of iPad Pros within the next few weeks. Again, what I'm hearing is that that's now been shelved, pushed into the future, partly because of supply chain issues, but also releasing a new product when that news is going to be bookended by coronavirus and human suffering and death just doesn't sound too good. And I think that would be negative press. It's far better for Apple to just pull back, as most tech companies are doing as well, pull back, see what's going to happen, and then regroup and think about how this is going to affect them down the line. Another product that's likely to be affected is the iPhone. While the iPhone launch is months away, it's in the fall, probably September, October, if we were following the same patterns. A product of that size has supply chain that is huge, complex, and requires months to come together. The idea that the iPhone will launch at the same time, we can probably forget that now. It's not going to be a fall launch that we are used to. I think the supply chain's too affected. The impact on companies of having to work from home is going to delay things. It's going to delay conferences. It's going to delay even the keynote for any launching it possibly. So we're probably not looking at it being the traditional launch in September, October this year. Will there be one this year? Will it be next year? Who knows? Life is changing and life is uncertain at the moment. And I think this will have had a massive effect on companies. They didn't see it coming. They couldn't have seen it coming. And I think now there's that point of regrouping. And the idea that things this year are going to be the same as last year, probably not.
Yeah, definitely forcing us to regroup and rethink things on a lot of fronts there, Adrian. All right, we certainly appreciate your input on this. And for much more on the coronavirus and the impact on tech and other things in our world, make sure you check out ZDNet. Thanks for watching.